This is Jay Sekulow. We've got breaking news. Shocking developments on the FBI and IRS targeting that we've now uncovered through ACLJ litigation.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jay Sekulow.
All right, we've got some big news, and it's in a couple of contexts. One involves directly an American Center for Law and Justice case that we have dealing with the IRS. But another one involves a report or information that Newsweek. So this is from Newsweek, folks. This isn't from Breitbart. It's not from Town Hall. It's from Newsweek, a mainstream, mainline, generally left-of-center magazine. They have reported that after January 6th, the FBI co-authored a what they call a restricted report on domestic violent extremists. But in that report, they shifted the definition of what they were dealing with, and they said anti-government, anti-violent extremism is now the furtherance of ideological agendas, furtherance of political, ready for this, and or social agendas, which makes sense on why they're attacking the pro-life movement. So this is coming out of the FBI. And went further in October of 22, created a new category of threat assessments, and again, going off of the domestic violence situation. Now, we saw a lot of this when we got no action on pro-life crisis pregnancy centers being attacked, blown up in some instances, and nothing happening. Well, now we know exactly why. They were focused, Logan, in an entirely different direction, and that's why we advise some of our clients to stop cooperating with the FBI.
Yeah, exactly. And something you didn't really ever expect to have to do that we were doing, and you're right. They were getting firebombed, all these things were happening, and there was no protection there. And now, not only that, we've uncovered even more through some ACLJ work that's pretty fascinating.
Okay, folks, this is a buckle up your seatbelt moment. So you remember that a couple of years back, as soon as actually it was right when the Biden administration came to power, we had done this case against the IRS to stop their targeting of conservative, Christian, and pro-life organizations. And we litigated for 3 years. We had a great victory, got an injunction, monetary damages for our clients. The IRS had to stop doing this. Lois Lerner lost her job. Others did as well. But then as soon as the Biden administration was in, I mean, literally within 5 months, the IRS sent out a letter to a group called Christians Engaged. They're represented by friends of ours at the Liberty Council. And the case has been resolved. And they were questioning their IRS tax-exempt status. And they had a legend. And in this legend, they would say, well, C equals Texas, D equals Republican, G equals Promise Keepers, M equals the Word of God. So we said, there's got to be something behind this. This is ridiculous. No agent came up with this on their own. So we filed a Freedom of Information Act letter. We'll put it on the screen, which is the request for the information about who created this list. Why is this the list? Why is the Word of God on any IRS list, period? They didn't respond. So then what we did was we filed the next thing, which is we went to federal court. And that case has been pending for a year and a half, almost 2 years now. We got in a request for documents, and folks, this is breathtaking in scope, and I'm going to get into it a lot more in the next segment. We requested documents with the following terms: Bible, be on the lookout for; Christian, protect the rule of order; Word of God, oversee; and prayer. Those are the words we wanted to know in the IRS files involving this. And when we come back from the breaks, I'm going to give you the particulars, folks, because, Logan, it is fair to say it is breathtaking what we've got.
Yeah, it's a very significant amount. You're going to be really interested by this.
Outraged, actually.
Yeah, give us a call. We'd love to hear your thoughts, too. 1-800-684-3110. It's 1-800-684-3110. We are in the middle also of just starting to talk to you about our new ACLJ champions.
Yeah, so we've got a new program that we launched on Monday, and we're just 3 days into our ACLJ champion campaign, and we are already seeing great results. We have almost 300 new ACLJ champions. Now, let me tell you why that's significant. These are people that are committed to donating to the ACLJ each and every month. It may be $50, it may be $100, it may be $5, whatever it is. And if you're a champion, that means you're a champion for life, a champion for liberty, a champion for freedom. We have about 15,000. This was something Logan, we'll talk more about this again next segment too, wanted us to really increase. Wanted to double that in the next year. Go to aclj.org/champion. Make that donation. Make it recurring each month, and you become an ACLJ champion. That's how we set our budgets. We'll be back with more in a moment.
Government officials who feel like there is wrongdoing inside our federal government have long been supposed to be protected by whistleblower protection. We now represent Garrett O'Boyle. He was one of the first FBI whistleblowers who came forward earlier this summer to say that their FBI is wrongfully targeting conservatives, pro-life Americans, and parents who are attending school board meetings. He blew the whistle. And then what did the FBI do? They suspended him, moved him across the country, and then took his pay away.
Put this guy and his family in a homeless situation. He's an FBI agent, has served our country well, and he said these words. Take a listen.
But the FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. And we are all examples of that.
This is a guy that was doing his job, investigating cases, and made a whistleblower report under the existing whistleblower guidelines. This is one FBI whistleblower. I will tell you right now, we're already talking to 5 more.
We can represent Garrett O'Boyle in court, and it doesn't cost him a thing. He doesn't have to go and find money or take out loans to hire lawyers. He can get the best attorneys in the world, attorneys who have represented the President of the United States of America before Congress, the impeachment, and the special counsel probe. He gets those attorneys.
43 years of my legal career has been doing what? Changing precedent. It sometimes takes a decade to do it, but we've seen it, including Roe versus Wade, folks. Is it a tough challenge? You bet. Is it an important challenge? There's no doubt. Is it a winnable challenge? Yes. Is it going to take tenacity? You bet. Is it going to take really smart lawyering? Yes. The government is pointing its weaponization right at these agents, and we're going to have to defend them.
Join the ACLJ in the fight to keep America free.
So let me give you a little history here. We've got a document that was sent to a group and was a denial of tax exempt status from an organization called Christians Engaged. And it was a strange legend. Do we have a copy of that we can put on the screen here? Okay, yeah, we'll show it. And they used initials. So D equaled Republican, K equaled the county victory fund, M equaled the word of God. And I'm trying to think, why in the world were they even asking these questions? And D equals Republican. I mean, that's like too cute by half. So this was right after we had already obtained a victory against the IRS where they're not supposed to do these be on the lookouts. So we sent in a FOIA request. That FOIA request got no response. So we went to, and here, put it back on the screen, we went to federal court. That's what you do in these cases. And we asked for documents relating to these particular terms. Now, folks, we're going to put this on the screen here. Should I just go right through it, Logan?
Sure. I think this is fine.
All right. So on the be on the lookout they had this, the IRS had this idea. If you see these names or these words, prayer, liberty, target these groups for extra audits or target them for the initial audit, which they have signed an order saying they won't do anymore. But here's what we found. Be on the lookout for 1,155 documents, 19,231 pages. You ready for this? The word Bible, 1,677 documents, 56,552 pages. Bolo, be on the lookout, 639 documents, 12,888 pages. Christian, 2,603 documents, 115,644 pages. Word of God, 1,187 documents, 26,749 pages. Prayer, 1,946 documents, 50,098. Now, if it was just prayer for everything they've received that had the word prayer in it, there would be millions of pages because every tax-exempt organization that has prayer in it would have it. Their audit letters would have it. No. Folks, be on the lookout was not in everything they did. That was a very targeted program. They don't want to produce this. They've said, here are the numbers. We don't want to produce it. How are we possibly going to produce this much information? So they're already, CC, saying, we've got these documents, but producing them, too burdensome, will take years to do it, which is baloney. If they identified the documents, it should take about 20 minutes.
Absolutely. And this has taken us years just to get to this point to make them give us the numbers of documents. Clearly, it's targeting. Clearly, they are on the lookout for, and clearly, it is more Christian or conservative terms that they're on the lookout for. Like you said, Bible, Christian, Word of God, prayer. Those are what keep popping up to the tune of 345,000 pages when the IRS is reviewing documents for exemption. They are still targeting certain groups.
Well, we know they targeted Christians Engaged because I got the letter. And our friend Kelly Shackelford's firm handled the audit, got it resolved. We then went after the IRS on it because, listen to this word they use. Your founder and president is a motivational public speaker. Former congressional candidate, that means Republican congressional candidate, political consultant, and preacher of the gospel. This is in their letter. Your vice president is a public speaker, former president of F, which is, or E, F, the Eagle Forum, an intercessor, former prayer coordinator for Promise Keepers, and a homeschool mom. They're putting this in writing. This is what they're using as the criteria. Your secretary describes herself as a conservative millennial thought leader with marketing and political background. He now serves as the executive director for Collin County Victory Efforts. Why don't they just identify who these groups are? No, they don't want to do that. Your mission statement indicates that you exist to awaken, motivate, and empower ordinary believers in Jesus Christ to pray for the nation, vote in every election, and engage hearts in some political education or activism for the future of the nation. Strive to educate Christians on the importance of prayer, voting, and engagement in a nonpartisan manner. And it goes on and on and on. The thrust of your courses are, quote, political activisms with a biblical Christian value system. This is in a letter from the IRS. So the first thing you ask yourself is, why in the world is the IRS even writing this? Who said this was a good idea?
Yeah, and in that also M was Word of God. So
yeah, M is Word of God. Yeah. So they wouldn't say Word of God in the letter. They wanted to use these codes. So we kept saying there's got to be something behind this because we know how nefarious the IRS has been on this because we just took them to task and won in federal court on an injunction and damages.
But these things take time, too. I think people understand. We were working on this one just for years to get it uncovered.
2 years. Well, the initial request went out July 23rd of 2021. It was within a couple of weeks after the group got their letter. We went after the IRS on this part of it. The litigation was filed almost 2 years ago. August. Yeah, August of 21. So it's been over 2 years, and we're just now getting the documents. You know, we often say that when you're dealing with this Freedom of Information Act litigation, you're dealing with a needle in a haystack. But the truth of the matter is, you find that needle, it can be pretty breathtaking. So, again, 345,000 pages in the IRS, and that's just what they produced or what they know of. Bible, Christian, protect the rule of law, Word of God, oversee, and prayer. And I'm telling you, if they put in the word prayer in their database system, there would be millions of hits. So we had to negotiate these things down. That's how you do this. But so they got it, instead of having, 13 million documents that would have the word prayer in it, they've got, still outrageous, 50,098. You're saying, what are they doing with this? Well, I'll tell you what they're doing with this. Targeting conservatives, targeting Christians. And you know what they don't want to do? They don't want to produce it.
Absolutely, they don't want to do it.
And
they're saying
because
it's too many. We've made too many violations is basically what they're admitting to. They don't want to produce it because they're literally re-examining these documents. Anyone who has submitted an application for exemption, they are literally reviewing and targeting based on specific words, which they are not supposed to do, which, in the Tea Party.
Says the government, well, of course, the Tea Party litigation says they're not supposed to do these beyond the lookouts, which, of course, they were. And they're not supposed to be doing that. They were prohibited with a court-ordered declaration. But the Establishment Clause of the United States Constitution also means government doesn't ask these questions. It's not the role of government to ask these questions. But here's where it gets even worse. They don't want to produce the documents, which we'll get, by the way. We're going to be in court, and we will get these documents. We are in court, and we will get these documents. But the point of all of this, and I tie it into the targeting of conservatives, the lack of activity on the – when's the last time you heard about the pro-life crisis pregnancy centers investigations that Chris Wray was talking about when he was up before Congress? Nothing. And then you remember they targeted the pro-life centers, not just the states, the federal government too. And then – you had the attack on the Catholic Church. What was the attack? Let's send in FBI agents and get field operatives and get human intelligence to find out what's going on in these, quote, radical traditionalist Catholic Church. And Chris Wray said it was one office in Richmond. And as lo and behold, and we've got a case on that as well, it ends up being Richmond, Los Angeles, Portland, Oregon, coordinated. 3 offices involved in this thing, literally from coast to coast. So when you uncover this, folks, this is how you hold your government accountable. And then you take this, and if Congress was functioning, which they're not this week because of all the mess, you take this up to Capitol Hill, and you get oversight hearings, and you get reaction.
That's right. And we are doing that here at the ACLJ. You can be a part of that as well. Go to aclj.org, support the work, but also become an ACLJ champion. That's our new recurring concept. So if you're a part of ACLJ, we obviously, a lot of you have supported. We appreciate that as one-time donors have come in. We've never really spoken to you about long-term being a part of this and being part of it. And that's why we've started the ACLJ champions, and hundreds of you have joined us just in the last few days.
So, Will, you just put in the chat that we've uncovered that they have 1,200 pages potentially responsive thus far?
That's right. In a joint status report with the FBI on the case involving the radical traditional Catholics targeting, they revealed that they have thus far 1,200 potentially responsive documents.
And this guy, and Chris Wray went to Capitol Hill and said it was one office, one agent with one 3-page report that now had 1,200 pages. We're finding this out, folks, because we're going to court and getting the answers. And then we hold our government accountable, whether it's continued litigation, whether it's over at Capitol Hill. And I'm telling you, this is the perfect example. This is outrageous that the IRS would still be doing this. To me, it's mind-blowing that they've done it. They're not getting away with it.
That's right. And it's ridiculous because they literally were told they could not do it when they were going after the Tea Parties and the conservative ideology there. They have been told not to do it.
Told not to do it by a federal court.
Yes.
2 federal courts, one in Ohio, one in Washington, D.C. They had to pay millions of dollars in damages. But they don't care about the money. It's intimidation. Remember, the special counsel, Jack Smith, was on those emails about piecing together a criminal case against one of these 501c4 conservative organizations to slow them down. You talk about political interference, Mr. Smith? That might be one. All right, folks, we're taking your calls on this. I want to know your reaction. 1-800-684-3110, 800-684-3110. Also, we want you to support the work, as Logan said, of the ACLJ. We've had recurring donors for
decades,
30 years. We're calling our recurring donors champions. These are people that are standing up for life, liberty, and freedom. We launched a program 3 days ago. We have about 15,000. We've added 300 in 3 days, which is great. So please continue to join us, as our cases can take months, or in this case, as you just saw, it could take years. That's why your sustaining monthly donations are so crucial.
That's right. We've obviously had them, but we've never really asked. So this is our time to ask, and we appreciate you doing that. Become ACLJ champion today. Coming up next on the broadcast, Rick Grinnell will be joining us. We'll discuss this, the FBI targeting, and more coming up. So if you have your question or comment, even for Rick, give us a call, 1-800-684-3110. We'll be right back.
First of all, if you donate any amount ever, we appreciate that so much. But if you're a monthly donor, we want to acknowledge you as an ACLJ champion. You're a champion of life, of liberty, and of freedom. And I just want to take a moment to thank you and personally recognize the important role that you play in the ACLJ. We have 15,000 of you right now, which is fantastic. I want to double that in the next year. So we want to get that to 30,000, and we believe we could do it. And we're going to do it day by day. You know, we're handling the most complex litigation you can imagine. Stuff we never even thought that would be litigated is now being litigated, and we're doing that. But we need you to become part of that team.
It's how we continue to expand our work. It's how we're ready to fight all those 14th Amendment cases all over the country, wherever we need to be. And those are fast-track cases.
I mean, these are complex stuff. 14th Amendment, Section 3, there's not a lot of law in it. We're making law.
These are going to be done before the ballots are printed. So you got to be ready to go all in the moment you take the case, because it's going to be fast-tracked all the way through the legal system. And you can't assume that they're just going to get tossed out of court. You have to assume you could end up at the U.S. Supreme Court.
We bolstered our team. We brought in some of my colleagues that represented the former president.
You need resources to do that. Our ACLJ champions make that happen.
We're about to file a major lawsuit for Charlie Kirk and TPUSA. We're representing those whistleblowers on Capitol Hill. File a brief in the Supreme Court on the abortion cases, religious liberty cases in the United States and around the globe, defending Israel at international tribunals, and defending persecuted Christians in places like Pakistan and Iran.
Our cases take months, sometimes years, and that's why your sustaining monthly donations are crucial. So we need you to become an ACLJ champion today. Go to aclj.org/champions and become a recurring donor at whatever amount you're comfortable with at aclj.org/champions.
So go to aclj.org/champions, and you could join this elite group of our ACLJ donors who stand with us each and every month. Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. We've got Rick Grinnell, our senior advisor on global affairs, and, of course, former acting director of national intelligence and ambassador to Germany, knows a lot about these issues. Rick, a couple of things I want to start with. First, Newsweek, and this is, again, coming from Newsweek, so this isn't coming from us or Breitbart or Town Hall. This is Newsweek. Has a very lengthy report about how the FBI has shifted its focus on, quote, domestic terrorism to anti-government, anti-authority violent extremism, and now they're doing it to for furtherance of ideological agendas. This is the exact language they use, and furtherance of political and or social agendas, which we know what that means. Pro-life, conservative, pro-America, America first, whatever it might be. Then, on top of that, I'm giving you the double whammy of it. We've got litigation, and you've talked often about the importance of the FOIA litigation, and this is exactly why you do it. And it is a needle in the haystack, and you know that you file these things and you get 20,000 documents, and one of them is unbelievable. I'm going to put it on the screen. Rick, you're not going to be able to see it, but I'll read it to you. We have this case where the IRS, after we had won successfully a restraining order against the IRS of going after Tea Party groups and pro-life groups and conservative groups, that they couldn't do that kind of targeting anymore, these be-on-the-lookout lists. But as soon as Biden's in, within 3 months, they started doing it again. The group was called Christians Engaged, and they used initials to describe certain things. D equaled Republican. They went in the letter. They wouldn't say Republican. They would say D. So a D, which you would think would be Democrat, equals Republican. M was the Word of God. So the case got resolved, but we went to court to find out who in the world started this. We asked for responsive documents. Over 345,000 pages. But Rick, here's the titles. The Bible, 56,552 pages in IRS database on this issue. Christian, 115,644 pages. Word of God, 26,749 pages. Prayer, 50,098 pages. Couple that with the IRS going after, quote, conservative Catholics, what they call traditionalist Catholics, which Christopher Wray said was one office. We find out it's not one office. It's coast to coast, Richmond, Los Angeles, Portland, Oregon. You were the director of national intelligence. What in the world? I mean, I think we've uncovered a juggernaut here. What is going on?
Well, my first reaction is thank God for the ACLJ team. This is the type of stuff that you have to dig deep. You have to go in. How many years did you say this took us?
Over 2 years.
I mean, most people give up, Jay. Most organizations don't have the depth or the knowledge to be able to stay on it. When I see something like this, it is infuriating because it took 2 years for them to give over the fact that they have been targeting Christians. Now, juxtapose that with the fact that 6 months after I got out of office, all of my emails at the State Department were turned over. The entire emails were just given to these lefty NGOs and media outlets that wanted my emails. This is the double standard that we're talking about. This is
on yours, to be clear, Rick, it normally takes 2 years to get documents. Yours were out within months.
Within months. There was no pushback from the State Department. Somebody asked and they said, okay, how much do you want? And they turned over my emails. It's outrageous. Good thing they were disappointed because most of my emails were to the staff, come up and see me. Let's discuss this in person. I realize exactly what you're supposed to do here. But look, the reality is what we've uncovered here at ACLJ is the weaponization of government. And this continues. Remember Obama, his IRS did this. And now what we've been able to uncover after 2 years of staying on this is unbelievable targeting of Christians. And we have to be able to dig deep. I hope we can find some members of Congress to join us. But I just have to say a thank you to all of the people that support us, because this is the type of work that no one else is doing. Lawyers who stay on this for 2 years and they don't take what the government says at face value.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we even launched the ACLJ Champions. You just kind of dovetailed into that, is when it takes years and years, it can't just be people come in, give a one-time donation. We love that. We appreciate it more than you possibly can imagine. But that is why we need to know that there is a core group of people that are always there.
Yeah, and you can look at ACLJ Champion by just going to aclj.org/champion, and your monthly gifts make you an ACLJ champion. It's that simple. You're a champion for life, liberty, and freedom. Rick, we've had concerns, and you've seen it inside government. I've seen it in representing the former president, that these institutions, when we talk about a deep state, it's not just at the top level. It's getting deeper, unfortunately. I'm seeing it at the agent level now, which is very concerning, because we used to think, it was the guys on the 7th floor at the Department of Justice building. It wasn't the agents in the field, but something is going on here. It's a huge law enforcement culture shift. We're viewed as the enemy. We're viewed as dangerous. If we believe in an American first principle and protect ourselves. I mean, Joe Biden today, last night, signs an executive order to build a wall. Now, this is a guy who said the wall was ridiculous, we don't need it, and he signs it yesterday because they're getting clobbered. We're getting clobbered on our southern border.
Yeah, on that point, it's Democratic governors who pushed sanctuary cities forever. Finally, in the blue states, they start to see the problems and they start complaining. And so then Joe Biden has to take care of them. The lesson is that Biden didn't care about what Republicans were saying. There's no bipartisanship. There's no eagerness to listen to the American people. If he did, he would have spent 2.5 years realizing the border was wide open. He waited for elite Democrat blue governors to complain about it. Kathy Hochul and J.B. Pritzker in Illinois. And so it's really outrageous. When it comes to the FBI, though, I have to say this. The leadership is rewarding rank and file FBI agents who target conservatives with a pay increase and a pay grade. Remember, this is how it works in Washington, D.C. Through the bureaucracy, you move up the pay scale, but you don't get to move up unless you meet certain criteria, and your boss is the one who determines what those criteria are. I see it the same way at the State Department. We have Foreign Service officers who do crazy stuff with diversity, equity, and inclusion baloney, and they do it simply because that's how they get paid. That's how they get more pay and a better job, and they move up to possibly be an ambassador.
We saw that, of course, in so many different venues, but it's harming the country. We appreciate your comments. Appreciate you being part of the ACLJ team. Thank you so much, folks. As Rick said, this takes years to do this, and a lot of groups would not have the stamina to do this. We launched just 3 days ago, and this is something we've been talking about, Logan, for a long time, but we launched it 3 days ago, our ACLJ Champions campaign. And what a champion is, those are people that give monthly to the ACLJ. They give each and every month. And we have about 15,000 champions over the course of our, many decades of work. We are on a project to double that in the next 12 months. And that's a big undertaking, but it's interesting. Since we launched on Monday, we've added 300. Now, you may be saying that doesn't sound like a lot, but 300, 100 a day, in 220 days, you've added a lot of people. And that's what this is. It's a slow build in one sense, but we want you to participate. These are people that give to us each and every month.
That's right. You can do that very easily. Go to aclj.org/champions. Do that right now, aclj.org/champions. Also, we still got a packed show coming up, another half hour. If you don't get us on your local radio station, if you're listening over there, you can find us always broadcasting live in totality at aclj.org, on YouTube, on Rumble, on Facebook. Just search for Jay Sekulow, ACLJ Sekulow. You'll find us there broadcasting live each and every day. We'll be right back with the second half of Sekulow.
What does it mean to be an ACLJ champion?
Becoming an ACLJ champion means joining us in the fight for liberty, in the fight for law, in the fight for peace, in the fight for freedom.
The battles being fought in courtrooms right now will decide what kind of future our kids will have tomorrow.
So when you join as an ACLJ champion, we now actually have a baseline to know what we can possibly accomplish. And look, the dream is vast.
Being a champion means that you get to come alongside churches who are being zoned out of properties, who are being forced to obtain liquor licenses simply to operate, coming alongside students who are being told they can't read their Bible in school or even bring it.
Becoming an ACLJ champion allows us to take on more cases internationally in places where Christian persecution is happening on a daily basis. The need for
keeping you informed and engaged now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Jay Sekulow.
Hey, welcome back. Let me reset for you what's happened. So we had litigation against the IRS in federal court because they started targeting Christians. This was years ago. We won, got an injunction, got a restraining order, got monetary damages. Then they were supposed to stop doing it. They did. Then the Biden administration comes in, they do it again. Our friends at the Liberty Institute, First Liberty, went to court, or actually dealt with it administratively, got their client Christian engaged, their exemption. But there was in that questionnaire and in the denial letter, they started asking questions about prayer life, studying the Bible, using the Bible as far as directions for principles and values. And all of a sudden, they have this lexicon of words. We asked for how many of these documents exist, folks. Over 345,000 with the word Bible, prayer, or related to the Be on the Lookout. 345,000. We're entitled to them. And you know what the IRS wants to do? Not turn them over. They do not want to give them to us. And that's why we're in federal court. And we'll get them, by the way, and then we'll march them right up to Capitol Hill. We want your reaction to this. We said we take phone calls at 1-800-684-3110. Let's go to the phones.
Yeah, let's go to Todd, who's calling in Georgia. And Todd, before you go, I just want to say, if you want to call in right now, give us a call, 1-800-684-3110. We're asking the question, do you think this increased targeting of conservatives and Christians from the FBI and the IRS and all of the three-letter agencies is directly tied to silence people ahead of this 2024 election? What do you think? What do you think the motives are behind this targeting? We'd love to hear your thoughts, genuinely. 1-800-684-3110. Todd, state of Georgia, you're on the air.
Hi, Todd.
Hey, thanks for your tenacity. I think this is what fascism looks like. I want to, could you contrast this with the IRS treatment of the Biden cartel and their request for thousands of agents, millions of dollars, including AI capabilities?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's dangerous. I've said this, Todd, that I don't believe that right now the IRS agency is institutionally capable of self-correcting. And I'll use an example, this case. You get a court order saying don't do this, and then as soon as they have the opportunity, they do it anyways. So when you ask me if they're buying, and we're representing some of these whistleblowers, and they're telling us the truth, and it's not a pretty picture. And I think what you have to realize here is, Logan, you asked the question, do you think that the increased targeting of conservative Christians is directly to silence them before the 2024 election? I think that's like at a minimum. That's what they're trying to do. I want everybody's comments on that at 800-684-3110. But, Todd, you asked the right question. And it is intimidating. You get these letters, and they start asking you about your prayer life. And that's what's in this letter. From the IRS, they are asking questions about your prayers. Prayer for the nation. What do you mean by this? When you say you want to educate believers on the Bible and a biblical worldview and Christian value system, why do you do that? What does that mean? Why is that the IRS's business?
Yeah, I mean, I think the IRS in general, and you get that envelope and it says the IRS, you're never really thrilled.
No.
I got one this week, but all it said was, hey, we actually owe you more money. Sorry, we messed up. So that was a good one from the IRS. But other than that, but then you get them and you're like, oh, what's this going to say? That's true. And if you actually do open it, it's something like this that's threatening, that's even more of a concern. Obviously, that becomes the real concern, not just for the individual, but for society as a whole. We do have a second half hour of this show coming up. We're taking your calls, asking that question. Why do you think that Christians and conservatives are being targeted specifically by these three-letter agencies? You give us a call. I want to hear from you. 1-800-684-3110. We'll also be joined by Tulsi Gabbard a little bit later on the show, also talking about the situation involving the border wall. You may have heard miles and miles of border wall are going to be built by the Biden administration. Quietly. They're not necessarily going to take credit for it, but that is what's happening right now. So we'll discuss that a little bit later in the broadcast. So all those topics are on the table for today. We got a lot more coming up.
We will take your calls at 800-684-3110. Your reaction to all of this. 350,000 pages about the Bible and the Word of God by the IRS. What do you think about that? 800-684-3110. We also want to encourage you to prayerfully consider becoming an ACLJ champion. We launched that program on Monday. We have 300 new champions. We have 15,000, about 15,300. We want to get that to 30,000 over the next year. We believe we can do it. We need your help. You become a champion by donating monthly. A sustaining monthly gift to the ACLJ makes you an ACLJ champion. You already know the cases that we're involved in. So go to aclj.org/champion. It takes just a moment to sign up. We encourage you to do it if you're able. aclj.org/champion.
Concerns over the crisis at the border are intensifying as migrants surge across from Mexico. Sources say nearly 9,000 migrants were apprehended at the border in one single day. That's the highest number since May, leaving officials struggling to cope. The head of the Border Patrol says everybody is overwhelmed.
This is a stunning thing. You have to pay attention to it. All right. And you're going to see an obvious trend here. These are the suspected terrorists arrested at the southern border. Back in 2019, you're at goose egg. You're at 0. You moved to 3 in 2020. It's 15 in 2021, 98 last year, and so far this year, year to date, 151.
We're also learning today about a new Mexican government initiative that's likely going to complicate the migrant crisis, at least here in the U.S. Authorities there have begun busing migrants from the southern part of Mexico north towards the U.S. This is an attempt by Mexico to free up existing public transportation that's currently being overwhelmed.
It's crazy down here. I mean, we're back to numbers that we were seeing in May. It is catastrophic. It is unreal. And it's a travesty. It's a humanitarian crisis at its best. And we have folks that we are supposed to call leaders. They don't even deserve that title anymore.
President Biden giving the green light to build 20 miles of border wall between Texas and Mexico.
And now the Biden administration is waiving dozens of federal laws to do it. It's the first time the administration has used this type of executive power.
The Department of Homeland Security announcing on Wednesday that Starr County is seeing a surge of migrants across the border illegally. This fiscal year alone, 245,000 people illegally crossed through the region, according to government data. In a statement, Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas said, quote, there is presently an acute and immediate need to construct physical barriers and roads in the vicinity of the border of the United States.
All right, in the ultimate act of hypocrisy, and this is just kind of the way things are these days. This was a guy that Joe Biden ran, thought that building the wall was ridiculous, waste of money. There's other ways to do this. We have the largest migrant surge we've ever had in U.S. history. Every city in America is now a border city. You've got these, quote, safe states. These were these cities that were going to be these refuge cities are now sending their mayors to the border saying, don't come to the United States. And meanwhile, last night or the night before, President Biden's administration waives 26 federal laws to allow a border wall to be constructed in South Texas. Of course, there's been tons of material on the southern border to continue building the wall, which they would not use. They wanted to sell it for scrap. So these waivers avoid the time-consuming reviews and legal challenges that can happen on so all the environmental laws are pushed to the side when you do this. And he's doing this wall because of the concern on the border. Harry, this was a guy who said this wasn't a concern.
Absolutely. And he claimed that he would not allow 1 inch of wall to be built on his watch. And he made that claim before he became president. Democrats have been claiming two contradictory things for the past several years. First, DHS Secretary Mayorkas and other Democrats claim that the border is indeed secure, despite the evidence right in front of our own eyes.
And despite the evidence that was in front of their own eyes, too, by the way, when he made that statement. He
Absolutely,
knew it. Yeah.
But it's important to keep in mind that they had blinders on.
Yes.
Second, they support sanctuary cities and open borders for illegal aliens and essentially open borders for terrorists. So now the Democrat chickens have come home to roost. From New York to Washington, D.C., from Houston to El Paso, Texas, Democrat cities are now being overwhelmed with illegals and with terrorists, and they're putting up the illegals in fancy hotels in some cities, and they're creating migrant cities in many parts of New York. Over the past 2 fiscal years, the number of illegals who have escaped Border Patrol custody has come close to at least 1 million individuals. And so now President Biden announced that he is building a border wall, but it's only for the Rio Grande area,
Yep.
and that is a fraction of the problem.
Right.
The problem extends well beyond the Rio Grande. the Rio Grande area has only seen 245 illegal encounters, 245,000 illegal encounters this year, whereas the entire United States has seen close to 2 million.
Yeah, and Mayor Adams from New York, who, they bragged about being a sanctuary city, is making a tour of Mexico, Ecuador, and Colombia. This is what he's doing. Plans to use his trip, which includes going to Ecuador and Colombia, because this is where people are coming out of, to inform migrants of the realities they would face if they decide to head to New York City. In other words, we don't want you in New York City, this refuge city. He also intends to learn more about the dangerous path asylum seekers are taking to get to the southern border. Quote, we're going to tell them that coming to New York doesn't mean you want to stay in a 5-star hotel. Well, they want to stay in a 5-star hotel. Who wouldn't? But you're not going to, is what he's saying. Then he says it doesn't mean that when you come here, you're automatically going to be allowed to work. I want to give people of those areas a real story of what's happening in New York City. And what's happening in New York City is a disaster. You hear reports from people about what's going on in New York City right now, and it's tragic because it's a great city. I'm a New Yorker. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. That's where I was born. I grew up in Long Island. And, so New York City is a part of my life. I practiced law in Manhattan with a firm for a number of years. It's sad and tragic at the same time.
Yeah, just yesterday there was a stabbing. That was a very prominent activist on the street who got stabbed to death, and that happened that became
mid-afternoon.
Yeah, so this is happening more and more in New York. Sadly, something that that was in Brooklyn. Like you said, thriving, one of the epicenter of the world. You really would want it to be a place that's understandably always going to be a little rough around the edges. Never going to be the safest place on the planet, just based on the amount of people that are there, but not what it has become. And it's just sad to see.
It was pretty safe when Rudy Giuliani was mayor. I'll just say that. Joanne's calling from Ohio. Joanne, go ahead. You're on the air.
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I got 2 quick points to make. First of all, how many tax dollars did we spend suing the state of Arizona to remove the shipping containers?
Yep.
Is one thing. The other thing is, they passed an omnibus bill that said absolutely no dollars to provide border security.
Right.
And now he's going to use dollars. Isn't he violating federal law?
No, because what he's done is what they complained about President Trump doing was using an executive order. And presidents do it, and there's always complaints. They did it when Obama did it, when Bush did it, it's the complaint. But they have the authority to do it. The Supreme Court has said those executive actions are valid. But you do talk about the kind of the duplicative nature of all of this, Harry, of saying one thing and doing something else, and not $1 to go to border security. Meanwhile, they should have had dollars going to border security. That's the problem.
Absolutely. And so they should have seen this as a problem on day one. So essentially, the Biden administration has never done its job in terms of securing the border. The Biden administration has avoided doing its job with respect to its constitutional responsibility. And as states, such as Texas, have taken affirmative action to prevent illegal migration, what has the Biden administration done? It is engaged in efforts to thwart the state of Texas. So, for instance, the state of Texas has instituted basically barbed wire and other barriers. The border officials, U.S. border officials, have gone down there and they've cut those wires.
Because the Biden administration has taken the position that that's unauthorized and illegal. Now, listen to what Joe Biden said when he was not president, when he was running for president. This was in August of 2020.
There will not be another foot of wall constructed in my administration, number one. Number two, what I'm going to focus on in the...
Right there. Okay, we'll go to number two in a minute. Number one, there will not be another foot of wall constructed in my administration. He's bragging about that. Of course, then in the dark of night, he signs the executive order saying, hey, build that wall quickly. Now listen to the rest.
Another foot of wall constructed in my administration, number one. Number two, what I'm going to focus on the fact is that somebody in this group written a lot about the border. I'm going to make sure that we have border protection, but it's going to be based on making sure that we use high-tech capacity to deal with it.
Except they haven't. They've done nothing on the border. It's beyond a crisis. It's beyond a humanitarian crisis at this point. It's like it's a war zone down there. And this administration, if Trump did it, they refuse to do it. And then they do it. And they still don't want to admit that they did. I hope people are going to ask them this at the press conference today. Maybe they will. We'll see if they do. But this is the nature of the problem, Logan.
Yeah, absolutely. It's become an ongoing issue with all of this. Look, we have a lot of people watching right now. There's probably more of this today than there has been all week, which also shows a couple things that always interesting to me. Not only is it a topic that's a little bit more heady, it's a little bit more in the weeds. It also shows who our audience is. Sometimes we're talking to you. We're not talking about the subject that's number one on your cable news channel today.
Right.
We are talking about a subject that is a little bit harder to really get your whole head grasped around.
Because it's ACLJ cases.
It's ACLJ cases. It's legal work. It's thousands of pages of IRS documents. Not exactly the easiest thing to break down in a 5-minute segment. But when we have our supporters, people who do listen to this show, it also shows when thousands of you more tune in for this broadcast than maybe a show that was on the breaking news item of the week. And also just want to say thank you to those who are watching and listening who actually want to get educated, want to learn, and want to engage in sort of a more thought-provoking conversation.
Well, I appreciate it too. But, Harry, go back to the budget issue here. We have the money to finish that border wall. The money's there.
The money is there. And keep in mind that while we fail to build the border wall against Mexico, on our own southern border, we are spending billions of dollars in Europe to protect the border wall with respect to Russia. And so I think this makes no sense, but I'm glad to see the Biden administration finally coming to its senses with respect to the illegals. But essentially, they're coming to their senses after all of the horses have left the stable, and they're now closing the barn door.
I want to go to Fred in Tennessee very quickly. I only got a minute here. Fred, go ahead. You're on the air.
Yeah, well, I personally think that the Democrats know exactly what they're doing. Biden knows what he's doing. He's never going to build the wall, and it's all smoke and mirrors. And,
I agree 100%.
Everybody gives him credit for more sense than he has.
I'm not giving him any credit for anything because I don't think he'll build I think you're absolutely right. I think this was an executive order and it'll end up being nothing because that's what they do. Because they don't. This is all part of their political game. All right, Tulsi Gabbard's joining us next. So you've heard from Rick Grenell, former Director of National Intelligence on this broadcast today. Now you're about to hear from former member of Congress and active military officer Tulsi Gabbard. That happens because of your support of the ACLJ. This broadcast that you're seeing 5 days a week, live on TV and radio, happens because of your support of the ACLJ. We have a program we've launched called ACLJ Champions. You become a champion of life, liberty, and freedom when you give monthly to the ACLJ, your recurring donor. We have about 15,000 of them, and I want to double that over the next year. Go to aclj.org, that's aclj.org/champions, and you become part of our team, our core team, as it says, that allows us to really expand the work and the reach of the ACLJ. That's ACLJ Champions. Go to aclj.org/champions.
What does it mean to be an ACLJ champion?
Becoming an ACLJ champion means joining us in the fight for liberty, in the fight for law, in the fight for peace, in the fight for freedom.
The battles being fought in courtrooms right now will decide what kind of future our kids will have tomorrow.
So when you join as an ACLJ champion, we now actually have a baseline to know what we can possibly accomplish. And look, the dream is vast.
Being a champion means that you get to come alongside churches who are being zoned out of properties, who are being forced to obtain liquor licenses simply to operate, coming alongside students who are being told they can't read their Bible in school or even bring it.
Becoming an ACLJ champion allows us to take on more cases internationally in places where Christian persecution is happening on a daily basis. The need for the defense of these Christians is overwhelming, and we can't do it without you.
Becoming an ACLJ champion means getting into a fight with deep state elites who are attacking our school children, who are attacking pro-life Christians.
We have lawyers right now winning in courtrooms across the world, but none of it would matter without the ACLJ champions. Simply put, we don't win unless ACLJ champions continue to step up.
We can't do what we do without you.
By becoming a monthly donor, you can become a champion of life.
A champion of liberty, a champion of freedom.
Please join us.
Please join us.
Please join us. Become an ACLJ champion today.
Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. We are joined now by Tulsi Gabbard, who is no stranger to this broadcast, former member of Congress, member of the military, and a senior analyst for the ACLJ's broadcast here. Tulsi, I'm going to start with, I've got so much has happened in the last 24 hours. So I'm going to start with this Freedom of Information Act request that we did. This was, and we've been in court on this for 2 years. This was, they first went when they were targeting the IRS. I remember when you were in Congress, I talked to you about this targeting of the IRS. It was pro-life groups or groups that said liberty or anything of religious value was, suspect. So we went to federal court, litigated for a couple of years, get an injunction, got monetary damages, stops it. And then the Biden administration comes in, and 3 months later, boom. And they send this unbelievable letter to a group called Christians Engaged, asking them about their, first they had a lexicon of definitions. You'll appreciate this. D, if they used D in the letter, that meant Republican. Not D equals Democrat. D was Republican. M was the word of God. This is absurd. So I'm thinking, who came up with this? Could not be one agent. So we filed a lawsuit. We've been fighting them. They finally acknowledged how many pages of documents they have. And I'm going to put it back up on our screen. But in essence, there's 350,000 pages of documents involving the words prayer, Bible, worldview, be on the lookout, which is something, of course, we were concerned with. Word of God has 1,187 documents with 26,749 pages. Prayer, 1,946 documents, 50,000 pages. What is and they put this in writing. This is what's so unbelievable. The IRS agents put this stuff in writing. What do you mean by biblical worldview? What do you mean by you take your faith seriously? What do you mean that you have prayer groups? And this is for any religion. This would be absurd. But they think they can get away with it. That's what's now. We've exposed it here, so they're not getting away with it. But your reaction to this, I do remember talking to you way back when you were in Congress about this targeting issue, and nobody believed it until you saw it, and then you got the emails, and it made it worse.
Well, Jay, I'll take this opportunity to once again highlight the importance of the work that you and the ACLJ is doing, because otherwise the country would not know what these guys are trying to get away with. Like you said, they are, I don't know if ignorant is the right word, but for them to put this in writing is yet another example of how brazen they have become in their dismissal of the First Amendment and the Constitution, period. This is the thing that I'm talking about everywhere I go, to every audience, every platform. Anyone who will listen is, whatever your party affiliation may be, whatever your thoughts are on the political leaders of our time, set that aside and be very clear-eyed about the threats that the Biden-Harris administration, the Democrat elite, are making in literally trying to undermine our constitutional rights and freedoms. And they're doing so in more and more brazen manners, more brazen tactics, whether directly politicizing federal agencies like the IRS and obviously the Department of Justice and many others, but also indirectly by censoring or targeting us through their partners in big tech, social media, or the mainstream corporate for-profit media. This is happening now, and this is why this next election is so critical, because it is these fundamental foundational principles of our democratic republic that are at stake. I hate to think about what our country will look like if President Biden gets reelected or some other member of the Democrat elite who will continue the destruction of the foundation of this country, as we've seen occurring over the last 3 years in particular.
I'm going to read you one paragraph from this letter, because this is so offensive that the IRS don't think it even. Somebody put this to a computer and sat down and typed this out. This is, to me, is mind-boggling, because if the Establishment Clause, church-state separation, means anything, it means the government doesn't do this. This Jefferson would be turning over in his grave right now. So here's what it says. Your founder and president is a motivational speaker, a former D congressional candidate, D meaning Republican. Why didn't they just point Republican? They didn't want to say that. Political consultant and preacher of the gospel. This is what they put in their letter. Your vice president is also a motivational speaker, former president of F, and you look at F as Texas Eagle Forum, intercessor. This is how they're doing it. Prayer coordinator for G being Promise Keepers, and a homeschool mom. And this is in the IRS letter, and this starts their inquiry process. So their bias is not only obvious, but the fact is, Tulsi, some IRS officials thought this was okay to ask. That's what's so outrageous here.
Yeah, exactly. This is very consistent, though, Jay, with what we've seen coming from, the Obama administration, the Biden administration, from many Democrat senators when they engaged with people who may have conservative views, or people like Amy Coney Barrett or others on questions of their faith, actually publicly expressing concerns about their religious practice, about how faithful of a Catholic are you. As you said, if you have ever read the Constitution, ever, even once, you understand very clearly there shall be no religious test. Not a little bit, not sometimes. There shall be no religious test. It is such an egregious violation of our constitutional rights. I hope everyone recognizes the work you're doing and the work we must do to stop them from abusing our First Amendment.
I'll never forget the late Dianne Feinstein, the senator, asking Amy Barrett, the dogma appears to live deep within you. And I'm thinking, first, it sounds like something out of Star Wars, okay? And then secondly, who asked these questions? But we know where it's coming from. I want to go to the border. So in the stroke of like last night, Joe Biden decides to sign 26 executive waivers and an executive order saying, hey, everybody, you better build that wall in Texas because it's getting really bad. Now, you've been down there. We've had the reports from down there. We've had colleagues down there. Your assessment of we're in a mess down there. And this, of course, comes after he says, can we play that bite so Tulsi can hear it? Where he says, I will not. I'm just going to play a little bit of it. This is what he said when he was running for president.
There will not be another foot of wall constructed on my administration.
There it is. And, of course, now he is. So your reaction to this, because you were on the debate stage when he was saying these kind of things.
Well, you have those quotes, and I'm sure there are many from President Biden in the article that I saw about these 26 waivers to federal law that will allow them to immediately start building a wall in South Texas. Was the quote from Secretary Mayorkas, who not that long ago over and over and over and over again told Congress under oath, our border is secure. Now, all of a sudden, he's saying, well, we need to hurry up and build this wall because this situation is just, it's not safe. It's not sustainable. All of this tells me, Jay, this is a last breath political ploy to try to somehow be able to tell the American people, well, actually, we recognize the truth that our border is not secure. And look at what President Biden has done, what action he has taken. They have breached our trust so many times, repeating over and over again that the border is secure when clearly it is more unsecure than it ever really has been, at least in recent history. I don't buy it. I can't believe that the American people will buy it. I hope that they do actually start taking action, because we need to secure our border. We need to send a strong message to people coming across the border now illegally. You will be sent home.
Yep, very clear. Tulsi, we appreciate it as always. Thank you for your great work. Thank you for being part of our team. Logan, this is a great reason for people to become members of our ACLJ Champions group.
Yeah, please continue to join us. Be a part of this right now. Join our cases. These can take months. Some of them can take years, as you've heard just today. Become a sustaining monthly member. Go to aclj.org/champions. That's aclj.org/champion, and donate and join the fight. Be a part of it. Become an ACLJ champion. We'll be back tomorrow with another Sekulow.